Good evening and welcome to Transition Talks Tuesday with Madison Metropolitan School District. My name's Tim Markle. I'm with the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. We are excited to bring this series to you. And we're very excited that we get to start it off with what I think is one of the most comprehensive overviews, if there can be a such thing as a comprehensive overview. This is a comprehensive overview of what you can expect, what you need to be looking for in life after high school. And we are very fortunate to have the Director of Family Voices of Wisconsin with us tonight. Ms. Barbara Katz is with us. I've known Barbara now for 13 years. We were just talking before this that it seems we've been doing this for a while. And that's because we've been doing this for a while. So Barbara is a family. She is a fierce family advocate. She's a parent. I'll let her do the rest of her introductions, but I'm really excited to have you here, and we'll be putting things in chat as you talk, Barbara. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. Glad to be here. Glad to kick off your Transition Tuesdays series for 2022-23. Crazy. I'm Barbara Katz. I'm co-director of Family Voices of Wisconsin, as Tim said, and I'm the parent of 3 adult sons. My middle son, Ben, who's actually 31 now, which is also hard to believe, is the reason I do this work. And Ben was born with some neurological challenges, has developmental and intellectual disabilities, and is absolutely thriving in the community. He lives in his own apartment with a roommate. He has, before he moved out, I thought he needed 24/7 care, and he has about 3 hours of personal care supports during the day. He works 2 jobs in the community. He's involved, he goes out, I would say 2 to 3 times a week, way more than I go out, and is just living a life that he's designed and that really suits who he is as a person. So it was a long way to get where he is today at 31. I would say that we started the day that he was born, and that his transition started the day that he was born. But clearly we had lots of support, lots of great professionals who helped Ben, who helped our family, and who continue to support Ben to this day. Family Voices of Wisconsin is a family-run organization, and basically we help families navigate healthcare and community supports. We provide training such as this. We have a really active website, which we invite you to check out, familyvoiceswi.org. We have a lot of helpful, family-friendly information there that does deal with transition, that deals with Medicaid, and deals with many other topics of interest to families who have kids with disabilities and special health care needs. We do some family leadership work, and we do work that also impacts systems change and public policy. We are really honored to be part of a network that includes those 5 regional centers that Tim mentioned. What is in orange here on the slide is what, right here, is what the counties that Tim's center works with. So again, I'll put a plug out for them. They are an amazing resource for families, and they really work individually with you as much as needed. And so as you have questions, I really do encourage you to reach out and connect with them. So why are we talking about transition? What is the big deal about transition? Well, transition, I mean, our kids, when we think about it, our kids and ourselves, we go through transitions many, many times in our lives. When we think about our children's journey, we think about how our children transition. Perhaps if they were in birth to 3, they might have transitioned into early childhood. If they were in early childhood, they would have transitioned into kindergarten. And as they go through elementary school, they would transition to middle school. They would transition to high school. And then at some point they transition out of high school into the rest of their lives. And I think it's that because it's such a dramatic shift from K-12 education into the rest of somebody's life, that the transition to adulthood is really a big event in the lives of youth and families. And I think that's one of the reasons. I think another reason why we pay attention to transition the way we do is that at age 18, there are some legal changes that happen. There are changes that happen, eligibility changes for public programs. Basically, what happens at age 18 is that our legal system recognizes that leap, some might say, it is from that an individual's status is changed from a minor child to an independent adult who is responsible for themselves, something that's called the age of majority. And that at this point, the person who was the same person when they were 17 and 364 days to the next day, all of a sudden they're responsible for their actions and decisions. And it's also the end of parental rights and official decision making. This is a big deal, right? Because a lot of times our kids with disabilities and special health care needs need assistance with support with decision making, with support with choice making, with support. Perhaps some of our kids need support for all of their activities of daily living. And that doesn't change from when someone is a minor child to someone is an independent adult. But what changes is the way the systems in our society recognize our kids as minor children or as independent adults. So that's one of the reasons why family members and youth often feel like this, because transition can be a bit stressful, right? And if we were all in a room together, I'd ask you all to raise your hands and say, you know, how many of you feel like this character or can relate to how this character feels, super frazzled, super stressed, or paralyzed and not know what to do. And it's because transition can be so heavily weighed that people feel this way. So one of the things that this training, What's After High School, is hoping to do is to think about all of those sort of areas of somebody's life that transition activities might touch on, and give you information that helps to hopefully relieve some of that stress. So at the very least, there should be 3 things to think about. 3 things that you really consider when your child or the person you support turns 18 or is getting close to 18. One of those things that's sort of fundamental to this whole process is a transition IEP. And knowing that when K-12 education ends, because our kids are coming out of the K-12 education system and school plays such a big role in their lives, K-12 education ending is a big event. And then the transition IEP is sort of a, for those of you whose kids are under the age of 14, you might not have experienced that yet. But beginning at age 14, the IEP is essentially considered the transition IEP, and you have up to 7 years to work on the goals and supports and services that are identified within that individualized education plan to best prepare your child to thinking about what they're going to do after high school. And that might be preparing for post-secondary education, for college, for technical school. It may be preparing for work. It may be preparing for participation in day services. There are numerous options to keep to make sure that people have full and meaningful lives after they leave high school. And the transition IEP is designed so that it supports, it provides building blocks of support for youth to get ready for whatever it is that they identify that they're going to connect with after high school. So that's one of the main activities to think about during transition. The second really big activity to think about is applying for public benefits as an adult. When I talk about public benefits, I'm referring to some things such as Medicaid, which is health insurance, or public health insurance, or SSI, supplemental security income, which is a public benefit, which can come with a cash check and also access to Medicaid. Public benefits also include things such as long-term support programs, Medicaid waiver programs, and in the kids' world, those are called the Children's Long-Term Support Services. For adults, those are called Family Care or IRIS, and we'll talk a little bit more about those in a few minutes. And even if, as a child, your child is receiving SSI or Medicaid, they still will need to reapply as an adult because there's different eligibility criteria. That's part of the process. So there's a set of eligibility criteria for children. There's a set of eligibility criteria for adults. Also, the financial eligibility is looked at differently. For a child, the family's financial situation is looked at. For someone 18 and over, it is just their income and assets that are reviewed. So oftentimes when somebody is 18 and they were not eligible for example, SSI, which is an income-based program, as a child, a family might say, well, they weren't eligible as a child, why would they be eligible as an adult? And the difference is, as a child, the family might have been over income for SSI. As an adult, it's just the individual's income that's looked at. And so the financial situation changes at age 18. The third consideration to think about really at the age of transition is assistance with decision making. The first question would be, does your child need assistance with decision making? Will they need assistance with decision making? And if so, what option is the best? Oftentimes, people are pointed straight to guardianship. And what we're finding in recent years, as more and more options become available, and again, we'll talk about this in a little bit, we will look at what those options are. It's really important to look at what those options are and not to go straight to guardianship. So I'm going to pause now. I'm going to tell you that the chat is super active with links that Tim is putting in. Tim, I believe that you will be sending these links out afterwards, right? Yep. So it's really important for Tim to have your email if you want to receive these links afterwards. Tim, do you, if for people that did not register, do you want them to put their email address in the chat box?
If they are comfortable putting their email address in the chat box, that is fine. I'm going to put my email in the chat box. And if you're not comfortable sharing your email over the chat in Zoom, then please feel free to email me and say, hey, dude, I was at that What's After High School spectacular training the other night, and I want the resource sheet and the link to the video. So please feel free to email me if you don't feel like putting your information in the chat.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. And Tim, one other thing for people that are listening to this recording, do you want to say what your email is now so that people can hear it in case they want to email you?
You are just so smart. And yes, I would also like to say that somebody figured out that you can also just direct message me with your email.
Right.
The chat has that feature. So thank you. You can also do that. But for those listening to the recording, you can get a hold of me at tmarkle, that's TMARKLE at WISC, WISC.edu. So tmarkle at WISC.edu.
Perfect. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. And I will pause and see if anyone has any questions.
You are free to raise your hand if you know how to do that in Zoom, which you could do down at your reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and you can see the raise hand feature. We will notice that. If you unmute yourself, I will probably also notice that and then automatically call on you. So be careful that you don't unmute by mistake. You can also put questions into the chat, and I will be more than happy to relay those to Barbara. And for all of you who you do not need to have your video on, we totally understand that we are doing this at an odd hour. It's always an odd hour, we figured out, because no two families are the same. And so it's always odd for somebody. So yes, please feel free to do what you need to do as you also listen in and watch for the information.
All right, great. Thanks, Tim. So this is a lot. I know it's a lot. You will probably come out of this session with your head spinning. So I just want to tell you that really there are just some things to remember that have to happen at age 18. Not everything has to happen at age 18. Some things can happen before and some things after, but some things that affect those legal, where the legal change from a minor child to a age of majority adult apply. Those are the things you really do need to pay attention to at age 18. And so what are they? Among others, registering to vote. What a great opportunity for your person to start participating in the community by registering to vote. And you can do that right after the age of 18. People do need to have a proof of identification. And so then for some people, that might be a driver's license. For others, it might be an official state ID, and that official state ID can be acquired for free at the Department of Motor Vehicles. For some, it might be a passport, but you will need that, that identification along with proof of where you live. And so there are numerous voting sites that you can go to see what exactly is needed. Tim just put in a link around disabilityvote.org, which has some great information for people with disabilities who might need assistance with voting. But registering to vote at age 18 is one of those things. Signing up with the Selective Service. If you get public benefits, you need to be signed up with the Selective Service, which is essentially the draft. Our draft is not active now, but when the United States government looks at issuing Social Security checks, one of the things they're going to see is this person signed up with the Selective Service? So that will be something that needs to happen. Again, that's going to be something that happens online, and your transition coordinator can help you with that. Assistance with decision making. As I said, I do promise we will talk about this, but some actions need people to make decisions, and some people need assistance with those decisions. So, you know, to start thinking about what those options are, to start thinking with your young person what those best options are for them. And then those applications for Medicaid and Social Security. And those are important, again, because of the re-eligibility processes that do happen at age 18. There is a different process for those under 18, as I said, and a different process for those over 18. The other dates to remember I talked about the transition IEP. Well, transition activities are required to start in Wisconsin at age 14, and this is by federal law. In fact, federally, the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, this is special education law, says that transition activities federally have to start at age 16. In Wisconsin, our Department of Public Instruction and legislature said, that's too late. We need to start at age 14. And so that's when transition IEPs start. Services end, special education services end the year your person turns 21. So if your person turns 21 in October, they can continue receiving special education services through the end of that school year, which would be in May of the next calendar, or June of the next calendar year. If your person turns 21 in July, their services will have ended that July prior. So those are some dates that you need to remember. There is a resource in, whoops, why isn't this going forward? There we go. There is a resource in the state of Wisconsin called the Aging and Disability Resource Center, or the ADRC. They are sort of a cousin to the regional centers with whom Tim works. And the Aging and Disability Resource Center are resources for people with disabilities ages 18 and older. And so for transition youth, they don't want people really to connect with them before their person is 17 and a half. But they can help with things such as SSI, Supplemental Security Income, or SSDI, Social Security Disability Income. They can help you apply or reapply right after your person turns 18. They will help you to apply or reapply for Medicaid. They will talk to you about the differences between home and community-based Medicaid waivers that I mentioned earlier. Some of you might know the waivers because your kids might be on the Children's Long-Term Support Waiver or the CLTS program. The parallel programs for adults are, as I mentioned, Family Care, which is a managed care model, or IRIS, which is a self-directed independent model. It stands for Include, Respect, I Self-Direct. And that is a program that allows people to be very independent in their selection of how they're going to allocate the budget that is assigned to them. But the Aging and Disability Resource Centers will provide something that's called options counseling, which will tell you more about the differences and similarities of family care and IRIS. They will let you know what in your county, what agencies are available to provide those supports and services. They will not make recommendations. They are not allowed by law to make recommendations. And so, and that's really hard. It's hard for them, and it's hard for you as a client of the Aging and Disability Resource Center, because sometimes you don't know which way to go. And so to get recommendations, I would suggest talking with people who might be using the program, people who are other families that are in your child's school. And by talking with people and other families and people that use the programs, you will learn a lot about these programs. There is some unbiased information that is available on the Department of Health Services website. And know that the Aging and Disability Resource Center is a program that is part of the Department of Health Services. Anyway, they are a great place to get the information to go when Tim and his team, when your child ages out of working with Tim and his team, they're the place to go for help if you need help. And but they're also the place to go to do some of these activities. So I've been referring, let me stop before I go to supported decision-making and see if there's any questions that anybody has.
Pardon me, Barbara is hoping that this is a review, that people are hearing this information for at least the second time, because we know sometimes it takes me hearing things multiple times before sometimes it sinks in. So I'm hoping for some people this is a refresher. Some of you, this may be the first time that you're hearing about some of these organizations. And so you may have questions later. And that's when you can very feel free to reach out to the Southern Regional Center. And we know transition, and we love to help families with the transition. So please feel free to reach out to us after you sit at home and go, wow, that was a lot of information. Now I have questions, because that happens.
And again, remember, you can email Tim at tmarkle, so T as in Tim, MARKLE at WISC.org. tmarkle at wisc.edu. Oh, I'm sorry, wisc.edu. Whoops. Okay, so tmarkle at wisc.edu. Okay, great, thanks. So let's go on and talk about supported decision making. It's a big one, right? That's why I'm sighing. So as we've said numerous times, there are legal changes at age 18, including decision-making and assisted decision-making. As a big umbrella, this is called supported decision-making. Now, there are also some specific tools that are called supported decision-making agreements. But there is also an umbrella that is called supported decision-making, or assistance with decision-making, assisted decision-making, all of these phrases that indicate that the person with a disability will need some help in making decisions, financial decisions, healthcare decisions, educational decisions, daily decisions, and the degree to the help that they need will help determine what kind of solution is the best for that supported decision-making. So there are many, many tools that can be used. I think about them as almost a continuum, from those being the least restricted to those being the most restricted. So when we think about supported decision-making, I like to sort of put it in two buckets. One where the person remains the decider, and one where there's someone else's the decider. So when the person remains the decider, one of the tools is called the release of information, or a consent release. This is basically a piece of paper that the person signs that says, I give permission for my mother, my brother, my sister, my friend, and that person is named, to receive information about me. That means they could receive personal protected information, health information, financial information, educational information. What's really important to know about the release of information and consent is that you have to have that in place for information to be shared after somebody turns 18, or else that information won't be signed. So at the IEP meeting, your person will be asked to sign or put an X or somehow acknowledge that they're giving permission, if they are 18 or over, for information to be shared on their behalf. Sometimes that release of information might happen before they turn 18, so it's in place in a seamless way that information can be shared with whom they choose. Similarly, at a healthcare situation, in a healthcare clinic, in a hospital, releases of information need to be signed so that information can be shared. Or else, if that is not signed and on file, you can't make a doctor's appointment for your child. You cannot make find out anything about their prescriptions. You certainly can't find out anything about their health status. And so it's really important, regardless of other tools that are used, is that a release of information is in place in different official institutions, schools, banks, healthcare clinics, hospitals, or else information can't be signed. Okay, so at the very least, even if you're trying to think about other maybe more encompassing solutions, at the very least, at the age of 18, have a release of information or a consent form signed so that information can be shared. Another tool that can be used is where the person remains a decider, are supported decision-making agreements. Tim put into the chat links to the board for the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities website, where they have supported decision-making agreement toolkits. And this information is it gives you a lot of information about what these agreements are, but basically when an agreement is in place, and this is a legal document within the state of Wisconsin, that when an agreement is in place, the person who has the disability essentially decides who helps them with what decisions and in what context. So they might decide that their mom will help with at their IEP meeting with decision making. They might say that their dad will help at doctor's appointments with decision making, and that information can be shared but that information can also be shared with both their mom and dad. So these agreements can be very flexible. They are effective when the person signs it. They stop being effective when the person changes their supporter or essentially ends their agreement. And all control sits with the person with the disability in making decisions of who's going to help them with what kinds of decisions and choices and in what situations. So those are two main tools where the person remains a decider. Where someone else is the decider, we get into more other legal tools. We get into a tool that is through the Social Security Administration called the representative payee trustee. And that means that instead of money going, so for example, I am my son's representative payee trustee. So instead of my son's money going to him directly, and it comes to him acknowledging that I then can essentially be his fiscal representative, right? So I would write his checks. I make sure his rent is paid. I make sure he has money for food, all out of that Social Security check. But being a representative payee trustee, the only thing that I have essentially responsibility for managing is his Social Security money. That's the only, for that kind of tool, it's only applicable for Social Security. Now, Ben, my son, could also name me as, for example, having power of attorney over finances. And then I could then be responsible for helping him with all of his finances. And the representative payee trustee and the power of attorney can work together. In fact, the representative payee trustee, the power of attorney, the release of information, supported decision-making agreements can all be tools that interact and work with one another. So one solution is not necessarily a sort of a one and done solution. It's something then that they can work together and complement one another. Powers of attorney, there's a power of attorney for healthcare, power of attorney for finances. The same person can be power of attorney for both. There could be different people who are powers of attorney. It's basically a document that gives another person, who's called the agent, permission to handle legal, financial, or healthcare decisions for an individual. So families can use a standard state form to set up a power of attorney on a temporary basis or a more permanent basis. And so that is, again, another tool that can be used. And then there's guardianship. And guardianship is something that is usually the legal option that most families are familiar with because it is used the most. It's not used the most because it's the best. It's used the most because it is what people know. And for some people, it is the best solution, but not necessarily for, and I would say not for everybody, it's the best solution. If it's the best fit for your family, you need to know that this is the only choice that goes through the county court system. So all of the other options are outside of the court system. Guardianship is through the county court system. You can go through this process on your own. You can hire an attorney. Sometimes counties provide assistance with this. Both your regional center and the ADRC are great places to get the information that you'll need to begin this whole process. So I'm going to pause here and see if there are questions about supported decision-making. I see one in the chat box or guardianship. And it says, can these trustee options also coordinate with trustee and special needs trust? Absolutely. And Tim put information in about a special needs trust. Special needs trusts are a financial vehicle that can be established for the purpose to benefit the person with the disability, and if there are, and it has rules associated with it. Tim put in a link into the chat box from WISPACT, which is an organization, WISPACT, which is an organization in Wisconsin that has something called a pool trust, but it has a lot of information about what special needs trusts are. Basically, it is, as I said, money that is for the purpose of use by the individual with the disability. It has rules associated with how it can be used, and it has rules associated with how that money can be, how the trust needs to be set up, so that money is not considered to be part of an individual's assets for an asset test for public benefits. And so that's why people who might stand to inherit any money. So say, you know, Aunt Fiona is here, you know, you're in Aunt Fiona's trust will, and she's going to leave you money. It's really important to tell Aunt Fiona while she's still alive to make sure that the trust is named in Aunt Fiona's will, not the name of your child. Because if your child receives the money and not the trust, that money needs to be spent down. And it's likely that public benefits like Medicaid and Social Security will be suspended or ended while that money is being spent down, and then there needs to be another reapplication process. So there's a lot of pieces to special needs trusts, but there's also a lot of information out there. And again, your Tim and his team, or the ADRC in your county, there is an Aging and Disability Resource Center in every county. Their team members can help you with that. Any other questions about supported decision making? Okay. Let's go on. We have 3 domains that I just want to touch on really briefly. We talked about the really involved stuff at the beginning. So I just want to let you know that, again, with the resource sheet that Tim will be making available, there's lots of websites where you can go way deeper into what we're talking about. So that is there's a version of that resource sheet that also lives on the Family Voices of Wisconsin website. And again, that was familyvoiceswi.org. So let's talk a little bit about healthcare. One of the biggest considerations in transition, when we think about healthcare, is to think about how it's going to be paid for. And paying for healthcare is, you can look at private insurance, you can look at public insurance, you can look at within private insurance, there are options for a person to purchase their own insurance if they're not eligible for Medicaid. There are options for a disabled dependent provision, which are where some plans allow a child with a disability to stay on a parent's plan as long as the parent holds that insurance. If in that case, your person can have both private insurance and Medicaid, similar to that as a child, where if they are on a parent's health insurance, they can have the parent's health insurance as a private insurance as the first payer, along with Medicaid. For some people with disabilities, who are employed, they may qualify functionally, but are over income for Medicaid. There is something called the Medicaid Purchase Plan, or MAP, M-A-P-P, which is essentially an opportunity for people with disabilities who have higher income and assets to buy Medicaid as their health insurance. It's also possible for somebody to have both Medicaid and Medicare. And again, the Aging and Disability Resource Center or the Regional Center are both very knowledgeable places to talk about how all of these insurances can work together and complement one another. Healthcare transition will vary tremendously from family to family, depending on your child's needs. So if your child has multiple or complex health needs, the transition from pediatric to adult healthcare will take much more planning. And remember that supported decision-making plays a role in this area. And that's where we talked about earlier, at the very least, asking your child to sign a release of information so that you can access their health information. You'll also want to think about portable medical information for your child to have with them at all times as they become more independent in the community. So this would be something that you would talk about, you and your child would talk about with your child's healthcare provider, and choices to know about if there are medical alert bracelets or phone apps or emergency plans or other medical information that needs to be carried with them into the community. In the education world, it's important, we talked about how IEP meetings with transition planning beginning at the age of 14. That is called, one of the tools that's used is the post-secondary transition plan. During this transition planning, you will also be introduced to another program called the vocational rehabilitation, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. And that is a program within the Department of Workforce Development. Voc Rehab is it's a program that helps somebody think about employment, get employment, maintain employment. It pays for assessments for people to do things such as interest inventories and a skill assessment to help them, the young person, think about what is most helpful, most preferred area that they might want to start thinking about, where to think about working, where to find a job. DVR usually has a DVR consultant who is connected to each high school and will come in initially as part of the usually will come in initially as part of the IEP team. The DVR representative can start connecting with your child around the age of 16, but usually starts connecting when they are in their usually second to last year of high school. Again, because of capacity, they really can't always start as early as they would want to start with every person who is eligible for DVR services. But you can start the process by making you can do a self-referral to the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or your IEP team can help with that referral, or the IEP team can introduce you to the VR counselor who is connected to your child's high school. They can then help make that application, that there is an application process. There is a bit of a waiting time while that application is processed. And then what's important to know about DVR is that I always thought that once you start with DVR, it's sort of a one and done thing, and that is so wrong. It's a huge myth. You can enter DVR and connect with them at any point, and cases can be open and closed throughout somebody's career. Class selection is something else that you think about with your IEP team, whether or not to graduate at age 18. If your school offers a high school equivalency diploma or a certificate of completion, that might be an option rather than a high school diploma. And talking with your IEP team about the differences between those is an important conversation to have. A lot of times kids say, you know, I'm going to go through high school only through my senior year and then I'm done. I am not going back. I would encourage you to have really repeated and persuasive conversations with your young person to see if you can convince them, if that's where they're at, to really stay in school after 12th grade, because there's so many opportunities. The K-12 education after senior year can help with getting ready for college. It can help for getting ready for jobs. It could introduce your student to volunteer opportunities, to life skill training, to career exploration. It just offers a very rich assortment of things that are available. For those who decide that they want to go to college, it's important to know that IDEA does not transcend, it does not go past K-12 education. It stops when you get that certificate of completion or that high school diploma. So it doesn't apply to colleges or universities. The ADA, or the Americans for Disabilities Act, is the law that protects students at this level. And it has fewer educational requirements for schools than IDEA. Which means that students won't have the same access to the same supports and services. Another difference is that students will need to seek out services and supports. There isn't an overall plan like an IEP. So that is something to consider. Schools have offices of disability services, and that would be the best plan is to have you or your student contact the Office of Disability Services at the institution or the college where your person is hoping to enroll before they're enrolling, to get sort of the lay of the land, to see what that's all about. And just wrapping up, our last section is talking about community living. And when we talk about community living, we talk about identifying those outcomes or goals. What do we want our life to look like? How can we create the most meaningful life possible for our child, with our child, and then what kinds of supports do they need? It's these kinds of discussions, beginning with those outcomes and goals, that you and your child will have with, if they have long-term support services, they'll have those discussions with your service coordinators, with your family care consultants, with your IRIS consultants, to start thinking about what are those big dreams and goals, and then how do supports and services fit into that. And so there are many components to community living and community participation. But again, those don't have to be dealt with immediately at transition time. So when you think about those next steps, think about what concern or issue you'll take on first, which partners you'll ask to help you. What kinds of information might you need? And it's this information and the answers to this that will help direct you to what those next steps are. I encourage you to keep the link to this video so that you have it to refer to as you have more questions. I encourage you to, when you get that resource list from Tim, to keep that in a place where you can find it. Because as I said, there are many resources on there that will really help to dig deeper into some of these things that we just barely scratched the surface with tonight. So on behalf of Tim and the Regional Center and on behalf of Family Voices of Wisconsin, I really want to thank you for participating. For those who are with us tonight, Tim popped a short evaluation link into the chat box, and I would encourage you just to take a few minutes and tell us how we can improve this training for you. So take care and enjoy the rest of your day. And with that, we will end the recording.
Well, thank you, Barbara. I do want to get on the recording, though, that if you did register, you will receive automatically the link to the recording when I can get it posted. As well as the resource list. Again, if you did not register, then I will need your email address either sent to me at tmarkle@wis.edu, or you can put it in the chat if you're watching this live. So just by registering, you will get access to this recording and you'll get access to the resource sheets. Also in the chat are the links to Family Voices recording of What's After High School. So another presentation pretty much like this, along with their resource sheet, which is also fantastic. So please use those resources. Hopefully we will see you all. Oh, let's see, when are we going to get together again? We're going to get together again actually October 4th from 6 to 7, and we're going to be talking about getting help as an adult, learning a lot more about that Aging and Disability Resource Center that Barbara was touching on and letting you know about. We're going to be able to do a deeper dive into exactly who they are and how they're going to help you in transition. So I hope you could join us on October 4th. Thank you all so much for being here. Have a great evening. Thanks again, Barbara.
Take care, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.